Good morning. Whoa. Well, I've been suffering for the Lord this past couple. As you know, we have been going into spiritual disciplines, and oddly enough, the week that was supposed to be this week, I'm not doing, and it is on fasting. I'm like 12 days on a cruise ship does not prepare one for fasting. So Trace and I are working on that now to just sort of get in the mindset together of that. But also I need to let you know I do not have my phone. I haven't had it for like 14 days. So it was flying around on a British Airways jet at some point, and who knows? It never got turned in. So if I have not answered you, don't be offended. I have not answered anyone. So if you need to email me right at this point or Slack, if you have that, please do that. I'm definitely available this week. So this week, we're going to talk about the sacred joy of celebration, a forgotten discipline. Richard Foster says this: doing what needs to be done when it needs to be done. That is the purpose of spiritual disciplines. Being ready and being able to do what needs to be done when it needs to be done. Remember in Ecclesiastes, there's a time for mourning, there's a time for dancing, there's a time for celebration. There's so many times for things. It's like, okay, there's a time for prayer, there's a time for Bible study, but there is a time for celebration. And there's two bents probably in this room, and I'll give you what mine is, and I'll show what I've seen on other people. The bent that I was raised in was sort of like, for such a worm as I. Like there's nothing, like I am deceitfully wicked above all things, who can know it. My heart is evil, you know, and I've just got to constantly humble myself because I'm sort of a bad person. Now, in the end, that's true. What seeps through the heart comes out that way. That can be true, but there's another side to that where we can learn that, okay, I'm not all bad. God created me as good, and He had desire for us that is good. So I'm going to, does anyone have any younger kids in here that will be offended by one word I might say wrong? I don't see. Is there anyone? Just let me know. If there's not a young, oh, good. I'm going to get away with it. All right. Next slide, please. Does anyone know where this is? I'll give you. Say again? Santorini, exactly. Yep. It's in Santorini, Greece. And this is in the pejorative. I'm not going to say it just yet. It's a Santorini donkey. Santorini donkeys, I was warned about them. The cruise ship said, look, they're going to offer you to these donkeys will take you up down this path all the way up to the top of Santorini, or there's a tram. They said, we encourage you not to take the donkeys because they're not well taken care of. So these donkeys, they look worse than this. I've seen them, but this is just one of them. But an interesting quote from St. Francis of Assisi. You've heard some from him. Has anyone heard that name before? St. Francis of Assisi, right? This is what St. Francis of Assisi said. I have a part of me that I call Brother Ass. And I got to realize it's always there. Brother Ass wants to step out and show itself at times unless I keep him under control. We want to ride the donkey, not be ridden by the donkey. Listen about C.S. Lewis explains, ass is, I'm sorry, is exquisitely right because no one in his senses can neither revere nor hate a donkey. It is useful, sturdy, lazy, obstinate, and lovable, patient, and an infuriating beast, deserving now a stick and now a carrot, both pathetically and absurdly beautiful. So the body. Now, the donkeys of Santorini have an excuse. They're under bondage by captors. Maybe you have an excuse too. They have owners, and they are taking their whips, and I saw it, like they'll hit them things with a stick. Those donkeys don't know any better. And I had to think, in this church, even this size, there's some here that have been ridden hard and have gone through some stuff, and you don't know any better. You're just walking up and down the same path every day, getting whipped on, whipping yourself, you know what I mean, with like self-talk, beating yourself up. And we get comfortable with it. We get comfortable with being the Santorini donkey. I don't know any better. I'm just going to take one step at a time. I feel like them now, but their knees are hurting too. But maybe you can resonate. Does anyone resonate with that? But I resonated with brother ass. That hit me. Because when I let that brother speak, you can fill out the rest. So I want you to be thinking, this is my introduction to spiritual disciplines. Foster said, doing what needs to be done when it needs to be done. When it needs to be done. Being ready to step out of being in bondage to freedom. Being ready to pray when need be. Being ready to fast when need be. Be ready to celebrate when need be. But I didn't grow up much in that celebration thing. I sort of felt like when I was in church, I was taught to be humble. Got to be humble. So it's like, okay, I'm not going to celebrate anything. And I find it's funny that in the end, I married two very celebratory women in my life who are joyful almost all the time. It's just awesome. So it's like God marries you up with someone that can, sort of whip the donkey out of you. And it's so Nehemiah 8:10 says this: do not be grieved, for the joy of the Lord is your strength. Now that's really easy to say to somebody right when they're in the middle of grieving, do not be grieved. I don't know that can be said. But you can get to a point where you can go, the joy of the Lord is your strength when you struggle. In our hurried lives, we often think of spiritual disciplines as a somber act. Fasting, solitude, silence. We just got to do. And Foster says this beautifully. If you just pray to pray, or you just fast just to fast, or you get into silence and solitude just to get away from people and not go to God, and like that, it is a waste of time. The disciplines themselves are nothing. It is the one who created the disciplines for you. Another way to look at it is, can a farmer, like we got home, we were astounded by the corn. Like it's already super high. It grew so much, right? Did any one of those farmers have the power to make that seed bloom? Got some farmers over there, I know. Do you all have the power to make that seed bloom? But what helps the seed? Please say. You can plant it, and you can put it in good soil, and you can water it, and you can trim it down, like you taught me what to do with the tomatoes, right? You taught us to do is like you cut the bottom piece up before you plant it deep. So, think about it. We can get so caught up with, well, I've got to do this, and I've got to do this, and I've got to do this. But really what we need to do is say, God, I want to prepare the soil for my soul. And in the end, I can say, God, you've given and you take away, but I'm still going to bless your name. If the tomatoes don't bloom, they don't bloom. But if I cut the stems or the roots, or I didn't water them, or I didn't put them in the sun, that's my responsibility. So I want you to be thinking all along, where in your life are you a donkey? I won't say the other anymore. I'll do my best. Where are you a donkey being ridden by the evil one of this world, allowing yourself to be in servitude to the prince of darkness and beating yourself up at the same time? You might think that as an interesting transition to celebration, but Richard Foster says this: celebration is central to all the spiritual disciplines. Without a joyful spirit of festivity, the disciplines become dull, death-breathing tools in the hands of modern Pharisees. It's central, and it is probably, for me, one of the hardest ones to grasp. I came at spiritual disciplines with I am going to get closer to God. Years ago, we did a long fast, did all these things, and it's I'm going to get closer to God, I'm going to get closer to God, I'm going to do, but what I didn't realize is God has to do. God has to blossom that seed out. He has to make it grow. Celebration reconnects us with the God of goodness, strengthens our faith, and spreads joy to others. I'm going to pick on a number of people here, and I can't help but do it. And maybe I shouldn't. Are you all strong people? Are you all right? You all right? Kennedy. I always pick on Kennedy. I can't pick on him anymore. When we first started greeting each other, and I mean really greeting each other, I'm introverted. I wasn't down with that. But when it became a real transition of my heart, I found joy in it, and I found joy in it brought to other people. But still, there are those here who will stand and will not step out in faith to grow and greet someone else. And I get it. Probably if I were just visiting a church and I were in the back row, I'd probably stay there too. But God wants us to step out of our faith and find a way to celebrate other people and bring joy to them. I think America is sort of a self-serving country, right? How can you better bless me? Do it my way. And all this stuff. But celebration is going, how can I go and bless someone else? How can I reach out and say, it is really good to see you here? I'm not talking about a vain words. I'm talking about a practice that takes place, a discipline to go and greet someone and learn their name so that you can bring celebration in their life. They actually took the time to get to know me. They actually care. And if you're someone like me, you could go, well, you didn't know me a couple years ago. You didn't know me. I didn't really want to do that. I didn't want to hug anybody. I was raised in a time where there was, you just didn't do that. And even the guys, it was just a firm handshake, and you stare at each other, right? And then if it grew, it was that sideways hug that, men are supposed to give women. I will say it for the most part. You don't want to, guys, ladies, you don't want to give any guys anything in their mind to think that you might like them. But you just go sit there and you give them a sideways hug, and that lets them know, And so, but guys, when we used to do it, it was sort of 1, 2, 3, and we distanced. And if it's any longer than that, it was questioned. But man, the celebration of finding joy to bless somebody and to encourage them and to come out, it blesses you. It really does. The celebration, it's then it's not about me, and I learn what servanthood is. It's about what I can do to bless others. It's I'm going to step out in faith. I'm not going to be the donkey of Santorini anymore. It's just going to continue to be ruled by the prince of this world. I'm going to step away from that path, and I'm going to find freedom in Christ. And we can find celebration there. So point 1, celebration honors God's character. It honors God's character. Psalm 100, one of the first chapters I memorized as a kid. Make a joyful noise to the Lord, all the earth. Serve the Lord with gladness. Come into his presence with singing. Know that the Lord is God. It is he who has made us and not we ourselves. Enter into his gates with thanksgiving and into his courts with praise. Man, honors God's character for us to be joyful, to make a joyful noise, even in the middle of our grief and somber things, to step out of that saying, God, I am not going to be hindered. Think of that. I was just on a ship, right? And if that ship wanted to go from Iceland to the Faroe Islands and it didn't raise its anchor, is that ship going anywhere? Right? So I think we want to go somewhere as Christians. We just think I want to go, and we're hitting the throttle. And that boat's not moving. and it doesn't go anywhere. And when you don't have power to go and you're anchored somewhere, you're not going. So the anchor that we have should be Christ anchoring our souls, not us having all these baggage in us that slows us down. God delights when his people rejoice in him. You believe that? Celebration reminds us that he is the giver of every good gift. I can look around this room, and many of you, I can look and see what God has done in your lives. I just think recently, Miss Debbie, what you were the issue you were dealing with your jaw, and how God intervened and blessed you and encouraged you. Some folks are right in the middle of something. There are folks that I tell you, I want to respect so much the addiction community because they celebrate well. They're not afraid to celebrate. I went in with the legalistic aspect. You got to get a year before you're going to celebrate anything. I'm serious. I'm being real. If I can do it, well, I have my own issue. But now it's like, man, if you've had issues with drugs or alcohol and you've gone 2 days, let's celebrate. That's fantastic. Let's do it. Let's find a celebration of marriages that have endured the test of trials and frustration and pain. Let's rejoice in forgiveness and reconciliation. Let's rejoice in when someone gets a job or someone finds something, whatever. Let us find ways to rejoice. But when we don't do it and we don't receive it, we're not receiving God's good gifts. We celebrate God and we receive his blessing and we give it to others. Also, to celebrate is to testify that God is faithful and good. Let's go back to Mr. Santorini donkey. He takes me back to one of my favorite Christian images I have, and I know many of you here are going to know who I'm talking about. Yeah. Any guesses? Oh my. The Christian Eeyore. Oh my. Oh my. Oh my. And I'm not talking a week or a month or a year. I'm talking life is an oh my. And that donkey doesn't know any better. It's like, oh my, oh my. And it's got its anchor fully out. It's tied to that post. And it's been whipped so much by the one that is riding it that it does not know any better. It's only felt pain from the world. However, we in Christ have freedom through that. And one of the ways we can start in releasing the anchor is to celebrate, to testify where God has blessed. We're going to get in soon some application here. C.S. Lewis says, joy is the serious business of heaven. Can you imagine? Joy is the serious business of heaven. If you would look at me in my face half the time, you probably wouldn't know that. This one here, though, I mean, he's smiling all the time. Sometimes I'm like, you're not real. But joy is the serious business of heaven. My face gets contorted. Right? You can sort of read my emotions on my face. Unless I'm actually thinking that I'm being read. If I'm not thinking about it, I'm done. Or I'm just thinking about something that has nothing to apply. But imagine joy being the serious business of heaven. Then we get there, it's not going to be, I would get down on my knees out there, holy, holy, holy. And 10,000 years we're just singing, holy, holy. I mean, that's cool, but I think heaven's going to be so much more than that. That's why I think that reading the Bible, there's so much more than reading the Bible. It's actually applying it, pulling the anchor up, saying I'm not going to be guided by the wrong captain anymore. I'm going to make sure the fuel's there. I'm going to make sure that I'm in prayer, and I'm going to make sure that I'm in Bible study, and I'm going to celebrate. There was a song we sang in youth group years ago, and some of you might know it. Celebrate Jesus, right? Celebrate Jesus. Yeah, I see. I can't do that. I'd fall down. It was celebrate, right? We need to celebrate. But often the anchor is dug in so deep, all we're doing is focusing on what is holding us back. Application. Something for you to consider doing. Practice gratitude daily by writing down 3 things God has done for you and sharing one of them with someone else as an act of celebration. Write 3 things down a day, but take one of them and let someone know. Hey, I just want you to know I need to be held accountable here. Does anyone struggle with celebration? I mean, if you're like me, can you get nobody? Oh, wow. Okay, thank you. There's a few honest people here. I love that. I'm not talking about the party and going to the club celebration. That's not the celebration I'm talking about. I'm talking about joy in Christ and celebrating someone else's blessing. That we're as excited as if it happened to us. So consider writing down 2 or 3 things. And if you don't have 2 or 3 things, and you live in America, you might want to look up some other places that you could live and realize how blessed we are. Point 2, celebration strengthens the soul. Nehemiah 8:10, do not be grieved, for the joy of the Lord is your strength. It strengthens the soul. And if you remember when Nehemiah was building, he had a trowel in one hand with, that they were building the wall, and in the other hand, he had a sword. So while they were building a wall, they were also protecting because the enemy's coming in. Now look at poor defenseless donkey, right? He doesn't have much going for him. He just gets frustrated sometimes. But, we have the power of God to guide us. We have the sword of the Spirit. We are so blessed in so many ways. But the joy of the Lord is our strength. How does it celebrate our soul? Joy is not just a feeling. It is a spiritual weapon against despair. It was part of my grieving process to think of all the blessings that I had. And we've talked about that so much with Jimmy and Laura. We had so many blessings. But before I even knew Tracy, part of my grieving experience was going, I am so glad that I had this. I am so glad that I had this time. I am so glad. And it wasn't about perspective anymore. And that's where I got myself into trouble. I've shared it with you before. Tony Evans had a book. He had 4 kids. Him and his wife were married 40 years and she passed. And when I was reading that, I read it the first time, I'm like, I wish I could have had 40 years. So I had to move on. But I found somebody that lost far quicker and far sooner. I realized how lucky I was. We're just blessed. But joy is not just a feeling, it's a spiritual weapon to find joy. You should go watch Winnie the Pooh. If you have not seen Eeyore, go watch Winnie the Pooh and check him out. Or just look up Santorini donkeys and feel sad for them. And maybe consider that we're in the mirror there in some way, shape, or form. Celebration replenishes our emotional and spiritual reserves, equipping us to endure hardships. I had bank in friendships. In the darkest night of my soul, I had bank. I had the blessing of my spiritual reserves were found in my friendship, in the fellowship of other believers. I've said it before and I'll say it again. I do not know how people get through dark times without those closeness of friendships. And that's what Kennedy's alluding to when he's talking about build those relationships. Henry Newen says this, we must release the joy that is in us to heal the sadness that is around us. I'm going to self-speak for a minute. Well, there is no joy in me. That's how I feel. Check. Some of y'all, you don't have to nod. Just, yeah. Your first response might have been, well, there's no joy found in me. First question I'm going to ask, do you know the Lord? Because He is our joy. And the second thing I'm going to ask, do you have a spirit? Are you celebrating the good that God has done in your life? And not just focusing on all the bad. So when we can release what God has given us in that mindset of, I want to bless others, sadness around us gets healed. We put ourselves aside and go, I don't feel joyful. Well, you know what? I'm sorry. Maybe tell your feelings you don't care right now what they feel. I'm going to step out in faith. I don't feel like running 2 miles right now, and I'm not going to. I can't. I don't feel like walking to the car, but I've got to go, right? There's a lot of things I don't feel like doing. Many of us here are disciplined at the things we want to do, but maybe not for the things that we ought to do. There's no one that can tell me they don't have time. And if we get through the spiritual disciplines of things, maybe you'll find out, as I've been reflecting on, simplicity of life and living a less chaotic life. I know it sounds hard when you have small kids. Trust me, I remember. But releasing the joy and finding joy in our situation, even when it seems dim. So application is incorporate small acts of celebration into your week. Sing worship songs aloud. Enjoy a meal with friends. Recounting answered prayer. Recounting answered prayer. I'm going to celebrate. You know, Ian, brother, and so much the time we met, your prayer was to find a godly wife. Boom, here you are. And at the same time, at one point, I was praying the same thing. Boom, here you are. You know, I just like God, and reflecting on all the goodness that God has done and sharing that with friends is what blesses me the most. When I hear from people, like a lot of times in my position, I hear what's going wrong. But man, to hear celebration of what's going right, I mean, it makes me want to jump and run a 2-mile hike. I mean, whatever. Point 3, I can't do that, so I'm going to celebrate that I can walk. All right, celebration cultivates community. Romans 12:15, rejoice with those who rejoice, weep with those who weep. It cultivates community. When you spend time celebrating other people, they will more than likely invest in you. Now, we were just talking, Tracy and I were talking recently, there are people on Facebook that don't bring joy into my life. And you know what I do? I unfriend while staying friends. Because I can't take the negative. I've got enough negative in the donkey here. I don't need any other additional negatives in my life. So I just really quick, I'll go, okay, I've seen enough of this. Uncheck. I'm not unfriending them. Just unchecking it. Because I don't need to see it. People get crazy in politics. Uncheck. You know, just whatever like this, it's just done. Rejoice with those who rejoice and weep with those who weep. True celebration is communal. It draws others into God's joy and it fosters unity. We had so much fun at the marriage seminar having fun on Friday night. Those who were there? Yeah? Didn't we have fun? Okay, maybe not. All right. It was a blast, seeing joyful and having fun and laughing one another, but it drew us into where we had a unity that we could talk about harder things when it relates to marriages. We can unpack some things because there was a communal joy and there's also communal suffering that we experienced. As the early church gathered to break bread and with glad and generous hearts, so too we must gather to remind one another of God's goodness. Think of one thing today to say positive to somebody. Talk to your spouse and say, you are such a blessing to me. They might not seem like much of a blessing right now. Maybe you're irritated at them. But I'd have to bet there's something good about them that they do, right? There's got to be something. Find it. Find it. If you're going to talk about all the things that are wrong, they're going to give up. Find a way to celebrate your kids. And I was sort of raised on that discipline thing, and I had to transition out of being the hard guy all the time. I had to have a heart. You know, and so like my favorite Christmas character is the Grinch. And I feel like my heart has grew 3 sizes. I do. It's there. But find ways to be reminded of God's goodness. D.L. Moody said, a cheerful heart is not only good medicine, it is contagious. You're either going to find this guy, Pastor Kennedy, as a wacko who you don't trust, or if you take the time to figure it out, he's the real deal. And I have learned more about, apart from my spouses, I have learned more about a cheerful heart being around him than anything else I think that he's given me. It should be contagious. Yes? I saw some nodding, yeah? Application. This is what I would love to happen. You'll have, churches they talk about, they have their sections, right? Their groups, the inner circles. They have no. Some of those people just decided to fellowship together and they built relationship. How about this? How about on your own, you invite another couple or two to your house and have a cookout and say, look, we're not going to get too crazy here. We might sing one song together. We might pray for the meal and we might pray afterwards, but we are going to share testimony of what God has done this past year. This is what God's done in my life. And just be like, this is what he's done, and I'm so grateful. So that others can be encouraged, and then guess what? You form your own clique. And people can be offended about that. I think the people who are offended about cliques haven't gotten out of their seat to form one. With the love of the Lord, I said that. Conclusion. Celebration is not trivial. A birthday is not trivial. An anniversary is not trivial. A day of sobriety is not trivial. A week or 2 weeks or 3 weeks into a job is not trivial. Find ways to celebrate. It is a powerful spiritual discipline that honors God, strengthens our souls, and builds community. Let us choose joy as an act of obedience and faith. Next picture. Has anyone seen this video? I wanted to play it, but I didn't know how to do it. I'm low tech. But look up laughing donkey online. There is a Bengal tiger, an albino Bengal tiger in this nature park. And they came to see the tiger. But donkey didn't care. Donkey just came right up to the car. And he kept smiling. And he would change his smile to get attention. He'd be like this. Hey, here I am. And he smiled, and all of a sudden the camera came down because the lion wasn't impressive as a donkey that was smiling and found joy in his life. Smiling donkeys, yes. Or don't be yeah. Philippians 4:4. Rejoice in the Lord some of the time. And again, I say rejoice. Now, mind you, I know there are times when finding a way to rejoice is hard. But we can find ways to rejoice, even when things are going down around us. Step out in your faith. Practice the discipline of joy. Chances are, if you find it's hard to do, you're not joyful. Walk in my steps. Chances are, if all you see is what's wrong and not what's right, walk in my shoes. I'm happy to talk to you about it. We can go to lunch. Rejoice in the Lord. Find things to celebrate. Encourage someone that you know. Pray over them, bless them, and find ways to invite a couple or two to your house and have a cookout and give testimony.